Hello and welcome to a brand new series on RazorwireReviews. Yes, can you believe it? I know I don't do this very often, but it's a brand new series. Seen on streaming. Yeah, kind of, you can piece together where we're going with this, right? I'm sure it's fairly obvious and a little bit on the nose even. I actually had someone tell me in private that I should call this Seen on Stream, as in SCENE on stream, and I thought, I can't go that far and commit for that long to a pun. So Seen on Streaming it is, and this is essentially just a sister series to Conquering My Collection. Whenever I watch something on a streaming service, I can talk about it in one of these videos. Partially to alleviate my collector's guilt whenever I watch something on Netflix and I think, man, I enjoyed that film, but that's 2 hours I could have spent watching a Blu-ray I have that I haven't seen before. But, you know, with the amount of streaming services that me and Connie subscribe to, I feel like I need to get my money's worth as well. So it's kind of a delicate balance, which I definitely haven't struck yet. But I just thought, why not do a similar series, but focused on streaming titles? So what I'm going to do, there's going to be two types of videos in this series. The first one, which will be the way it's starting with this video, is a wrap-up video. So for this video, we'll be talking about January, February, and March. So the first quarter of 2021 and all the things that I watched in the various streaming services. And then the second type of version, the second, I'll leave that in for free. The second type of video and version of this series will be standalone reviews. So I could take a certain film or a series and do a dedicated video just talking about that and dig into it a little bit more than I would in this wrap-up series. So I'm just going to glide through them, tell you what services I watch them on and so on and so forth, and we'll see where we go with this. If you guys enjoy it, I'm really looking forward to doing it. And again, it'll give me, and it sounds silly, but it's like, well, if it's, you know, if watching these films on the streaming services will then give me material for future videos, it's more exciting for me then. It's like, oh, I can talk about this and maybe pay attention to certain things I might want to talk about in the video. You know, I enjoy that part of having this channel, so I'm looking forward to this. The streaming services, before we get started, that I do have and I'm subscribed to, Amazon Prime. I just have that for, you know, deliveries and stuff, so it kind of, you know, is part and parcel with the you know, getting free delivery and everything, because I use Amazon a fair bit. Not even for movies, there's lots of stuff that I get from Amazon. And I know Amazon are a pretty shit company. It is what it is. So there's that. There is Disney Plus. That is a must for me in terms of the new stuff coming out, the Marvel series, the Star Wars content. Even though I have everything on disc, I was hugely excited to see they added the Ewok movies in high definition. That to me is worth my $5.99 a month. The Ewok movies in high fucking definition. And I'm being completely unironic. I love those movies. That's a huge part of my childhood, and that's a whole other story for a whole other video, I think. But there's just the ease of it is there, but there's lots of series. They've added so much content with Star now coming over. There's just so much stuff on Disney Plus that I do enjoy, stuff I haven't seen that I really want to. So it's really worth it. And all the new Star Wars series coming out, there's just a lot of stuff. New Pixar movies coming out. You know, the jury is out on whether or not that's a good move or not, but it is what it is. Disney Plus is a must for me, and the $5.99 price point, I think, is still going to be there for another 6 months or so because of the Star library coming in. I'm not entirely sure, but The Simpsons back catalogue, as much as I love having the DVD editions, it's just the ease of it, you know. And don't get me wrong, I'm a physical media guy. I'm literally surrounded on all four sides of my room at the moment by Blu-rays and stacks of them. Still trying to organize the collection. So I'm physical media all the way, but streaming has come so far where it's just the quality is really there, you know, and there's obviously going to be these issues where things are going to play. You know, I recently watched The Rescuers Down Under on Disney Plus, and it looked great. It looked like the quality was fantastic, but every 10 minutes or so, the picture just jumped a little bit, you know, and so that's why I did go out and buy the Blu-ray. So the next time I watch it, it'll be a completely uninterrupted, stable experience. So if I have a choice, it'll be physical media, but you know, there's so many things that I enjoy that, yeah, I don't want to buy the complete season set of dinosaurs, but I love rewatching it on Disney Plus, you know what I mean? So it's just one of those things. Anyway, let's get into this thing. Oh, no, wait, so I was going to count down the streaming services. I will go off on tangents here. It is just inevitable. So I have Amazon Prime, Disney Plus, Netflix, obviously Netflix is just the standard. And I also have Apple TV Plus. I probably won't have it for much longer, and we'll get into that as we get into it. But that is all I have currently. I used to be subscribed to the Filmstruck channel and then the Criterion channel, but I just wasn't using it enough, so I cancelled that. And yeah, so I have my Letterboxd account on my phone, and I'm just going to go through the things that I've watched for the first 3 months of 2021. Now, before I do start, I will say the last thing I watched on streaming for the end of December 2020 was Mangrove, which was one of the films in the Small Axe series. Watch Mangrove. That is my film of 2020 still so far. What an incredible story. I highly recommend it. And that's another thing I forgot to mention. We have all the Sky channels. So we have Sky Cinema, all the various related channels, and so there's a lot of a lot of ways in which we can watch all of these things. Anyway, so the first film that I watched this year on streaming was through Amazon Prime, which was very handily available through my Skybox, so I could watch it in bed. Was Time, which has just been announced for the Criterion Collection this year. This is a documentary about a woman. I've forgotten her name. Maybe if I click on it, it'll tell me. It doesn't tell me the name of the woman. What is her name? It's a very quirky name, if I remember correctly, and I can't. I should say in the credits, Fox Rich. Yes. So this is a really interesting documentary, all in black and white, using lots of home video footage that she shot around the time of a very tricky part of her life in which she and her husband were arrested for a bank robbery. And he went to jail, and I think she did some jail time too, but ultimately he was the one who stayed in jail for many, many years. And the film was about her quest to get him freed from jail. And it's about the racism that is inherent in some of the legal justice system, and about her trying to raise her family without her husband at home. And it's a very well done film. I saw a review on IMDb that said that this isn't really a film, it's just a collection of clips, and I thought, did you actually listen to what you were saying before you said it? Do you know what a film is? It is a collection of clips stitched together. That is what a movie is. I thought it was very coherent and really well shot in the contemporary footage. The actual camcorder stuff that she filmed around that time was fascinating stuff, really raw human emotions coming out, seeing her children grow, and seeing this process of calling up the I don't know what office it was, but the kind of getting through to the legal system and just getting pushed back at every angle. And, it is this one bad thing that they've done, is it going to ruin their lives forever? I feel like they could have been a bit more forthcoming. I read afterwards that there was someone else involved in the robbery. I think that should have been a bit more transparent in the film itself, but it's hard not to get won over by the kind of feeling that this film slowly builds up as we're going through the story. And I thought it was a really great film. Really, really enjoyed it. Moving forward from that, the next one I watched was Look Who's Talking on Sky Cinema. Absolutely loved going back to this film. And the next few were part of 24 Hour Movie Marathon 10, retro version, which will be coming out in probably 2032. So I won't talk too much about them, because at some point you'll hear my full thoughts, but this was on Sky Cinema. Loved this film as a kid, and it held up so well. It's not great, but I think it's deceptively good. Really, really enjoyed it. Kirstie Alley, John Travolta, really great cast, and Bruce Willis doing the voice of the young baby. Just really, really fun. And then literally that same night, we also watched My Girl on Sky Cinema, because the theme of 24 Hour Movie Marathon 10 was going back to films we hadn't seen since we were kids. My Girl really held up as well. It plays so much differently when you're an adult, but I love that film growing up, and I kind of think that my hypochondria and health anxiety comes from watching this film a lot as a kid, because Veda, very strange name for a girl, is super, super hypochondriac. That's not a word. How can I phrase it? She has a lot of hypochondria. She is a big hypochondriac. Yeah, I don't know. She just has a lot of health anxiety, and she's always going to the doctor saying, I think I'm dying, and I remember when I was a kid, maybe a bit too much information here, I'm sorry, I apologize, but I remember when I was a kid, really young, like 6, 7, 8 years old, I said to my nan that there might have been a bit of blood when I went to the toilet, and I told her about it, and she went, well, it might be cancer. Thanks, Nan. I think I've told that story before, actually, but makes me think about that. Anyway, My Girl. Where did we get from me shitting blood? My Girl, loved revisiting this one as well, and it really held up. But I think I enjoyed Look Who's Talking just that bit more. It really got to me. It was a really sweet movie, and I just really, really enjoyed it. And I remember reading that, I talk about this in the marathon, but I remember reading that Kirstie Alley said that she fell in love with John Travolta while she was making this film, and they have great chemistry together. After that, we watched Willow on Disney Plus. I'd never seen it, and there's a very interesting story that I tell in the marathon video about how I lied to Connie about seeing it. So you have to wait for the marathon for that. Willow, what a blast. Super fun fantasy adventure film. Felt kind of cribbing bits and pieces from Tolkien there, I think. It almost seemed like Lucas's version of The Hobbit or something. But I really, really enjoyed it. Warwick Davis was fun, and what's his name? Val Kilmer. Yeah, was really, really entertaining in the film. Really, really enjoyed Willow. It's a good time. Then we watched The Rescuers on Disney Plus. I'd never seen this one. Really enjoyed it. Really fun film. Very breezy, like an hour and 10 minutes. Great stuff. It was good to see the original, because I grew up on The Rescuers Down Under. We then watched The Witches on Sky Cinema, which, no pun intended, I'd never seen, and I really liked. I'm a big Roald Dahl fan. When I was a kid, I loved his books, but I never read The Witches, I don't think, because it all felt very new to me. I didn't really know what was going to happen next, so it was very, the story's really wacky. And it was really cool that it's a Norwegian story. And I didn't know until when I met Connie that Roald Dahl, has Norwegian origins as well as Welsh, which is kind of fun because I'm Welsh, she's Norwegian. But the film opens in Norway, and it has that connection, so that was really, really cool. Terrifying at certain points, that some of that makeup on, what's her name? What is her name? Angelica Houston was really grim and gnarly. But that was a fun movie. I enjoyed it quite a bit. Moving on from there, we watched Homeward Bound, The Incredible Journey. I'm just spoiling all the movies we watched during the marathon. Well, there's a healthy mix of streaming and physical media. Homeward Bound, I loved that film growing up, and it really held up. There's some really sweet moments in it. Not the funnest experience when you see the cat in the water in the river, and it looks really distressed. I read that it was all safe, but it just kind of goes through you as an adult. The Rescuers Down Under. That's a film that I loved growing up, and I've talked about it in another video recently on my one of my Blu-ray update videos. The scene with the eagle at the beginning of The Rescuers Down Under it's an amazing scene. It's such a, I don't know, it's one of those things where you want to live vicariously through the character, and it just seems like such an incredible moment that is obviously a bit, well, it's hugely far-fetched, but it's such a liberating, like, wow, breathtaking scene, the eagle scene at the beginning. Then we watched on Netflix Addams Family Values. So we'd watched The Addams Family on Blu-ray a couple of nights before that. Wanted to watch the sequel. Netflix had it, and it's a really good sequel. Doesn't quite match up to the original. When I was a kid, I think I preferred the sequel, but it's a very good sequel. A lot of fun. The dark humor is just brilliant, and obviously kind of sad to see Raul Julia, reaching the end of his life, unfortunately, when he made that film. But he was just so perfectly suited to that character. The whole cast is absolutely brilliant in both of those movies. And now I have to go to another page to continue on as we reach the end of January. So yeah, I'd say that, most of the films I've talked about already are talked about in depth in the movie marathon. So there are just certain things where I feel like, unless I have something really, worth saying, I won't do a separate video about it. And I should mention as well, at some point in January, I think at the very beginning of January, we watched Cobra Kai Season 3 on Netflix, and that was awesome. I love Cobra Kai. What an incredible show. I first became a fan of the Karate Kid series in 24 Hour Movie Marathon 5, I think, when Connie showed it to me. Really enjoyed the film. The more I thought about it, I loved it. It's now one of my all-time favorite movies. I love the first two movies. The third one I can enjoy for certain elements. The fourth one it's there, but Cobra Kai, the first season in particular, is absolutely fantastic. Second season's great. I enjoyed it less than the first season. I'd say the third season, I probably enjoy the second. So if I was to rank all three seasons, it'd be season 1, season 3, then season 2 at the bottom. But I enjoy all three, but I thought the third season in particular, with some of the callbacks and some of the cameos, which I won't spoil if you haven't seen it, but in particular the episodes where Daniel goes to Okinawa, Love all that stuff. Really, really great. I love that show. I could probably do a whole video on it, but it's been like 3 or 4 months now since I watched it because it came out right at the beginning of January. So, down the line, I might rewatch it before season 4 maybe and do a full in-depth video if you guys are interested in that. But it's a fantastic show, and I'm so glad that it's happening and it's really doing all those characters justice. Scrolling through now, a lot of stuff I watched on physical media, which is good. Aliens of the Deep is the next one in February. So I watched that on Disney Plus, and I did a review of it for the Cameron King of the World series. So I won't talk about that too much, but a very interesting documentary about how certain life at the very bottom of the ocean is able to live without sunlight, and how that could be applied to life on other planets. Very fascinating documentary there, I thought. Moving on. Dangerous Minds. This is the last one for February. So this is a what's her name? Michelle Pfeiffer movie from the 90s. And I love 90s movies. Like I said to Connie the other night, when she's looking through films on Netflix, I'm like, look, if there's a film from the 90s, just assume I'm going to want to watch it. So don't watch it without me. Because she was going to watch Anaconda, which, it's Anaconda, but I want to watch it because it's been, 20 odd years since I saw it. And I love 90s movies. There's just something about it. I was born in the 80s, but grew up in the 90s. And I don't know, it's kind of a nostalgic thing, even though it might be something I've never seen. So I have no attachment to it, prior, but there's just a feel about 90s movies. It's not quite as classic as 80s, but it's like, I don't know, maybe it's the fact that I was alive during that period and I recognize some of the things like the music or the fashion and things, and just the style as well, the way that films look even. It feels like the 80s was a very grainy year, like film stock wise, and the 90s it's a bit cleaner, but it's like the digital age hasn't taken over, so it's still film. I don't know, maybe I'm just sounding like a complete twat in saying that. Anyway, Dangerous Minds. As soon as I see the poster of that film, I hear Gangsta's Paradise. It's just one of those things. And boy, did they rinse that song. It's like they must have said to the director, how many times do you want to play Gangsta's Paradise? We got the rights to it. How many times do you want to use it throughout the film? And the director just said yes. They must have been at least 4 times they use it. And it's a good song. I like it. I think it samples a Stevie Wonder song, right? But anyway, Dangerous Minds is about this woman played by Michelle Pfeiffer, who's a former Marine, I think, and she goes to a school and teaches inner city kids. And, you can see where it's going. She turns up, they're super unruly. They all look about 35 years old, and they got the problems with drugs, and there's race issues in there. And she comes in and she tries to teach them, about literature and things like that, and equates certain like poems as, the kind of rap music they listen to, and they kind of, she does a good job eventually of kind of getting them interested in learning and things like that. And so it's very much a connect the dots kind of movie. You can see where it's going, and you can see that she's going to wear them down and find ways to bring them onto her side and everything. And there's a bit of drama in there. It's a little bit overly, I don't know. I don't know the true real story, but it feels like it's been amped up a little bit in terms of some of the drama that goes on with the students. But regardless, I really enjoyed it. It's not a great film, I don't think, but it was a good time. So it was just maybe a bit over dramatic at times, that's all. And I just think that a bit too by the numbers to really leave a proper lasting impression, I think. So it's one of those ones that I probably wouldn't buy on Blu-ray or anything like that. So that's one of the good things about streaming. I think it's almost like a try before you buy. Unfortunately, it's streaming is what Blockbuster used to be. You literally pay a price and you get to rent a movie for as long as it's on the service. And if you want to own it, you can probably buy a physical copy unless it's a Netflix exclusive, etc. And they don't have physical copies, which is a shame. But anyway, that's a whole other topic for a whole other video. I'm assuming, it must have been at some point in February, I signed up to Apple TV Plus. So I'd heard about a show called Ted Lasso. I listened to the podcast called Ted Lasso. I listened to a podcast called Films to be Buried With, hosted by Brett Goldstein, and he is, I think, one of the writers on the show. He's in the writer's room, and he is also starring in the show as one of the footballers. And it's about this American football coach who comes in to coach a soccer team in the UK, in Richmond, funnily enough, which is a place that I frequented when I was 18, 19. I used to go there quite a bit. So there was a certain point in the show when I was watching it and I was thinking, that green looks familiar. Oh, I used to go there quite a few times. Anyway, so the show I'd heard about, I had no interest in it whatsoever. It's about football. Jason Sudeikis plays the lead character, Ted Lasso. It looked alright from the trailer, but I just wasn't really all that game for it. But people just kept talking about it on Twitter, and famous people, celebrities, people like Patton Oswalt was just singing its praises to the high heavens, and I just thought, it can't be that good. And it's just one of those things I often come into a show or a movie with, is that kind of, well, it can't be that good, can it? So I thought, well, let's check it out. So I got the Apple TV Plus 7-day trial for free, and I was going to watch Ted Lasso, and I forced Connie to watch it with me just to kind of see if we'd enjoy it, and we ended up really liking it, and we watched it in that 7-day period. I think there's maybe 6 or 8 episodes. It's a fairly short, half-hour long comedy, but there's some good drama in there too. There's some good sentiment. It's a real feel-good show. And again, just like Dangerous Minds, it's fairly by the numbers. You can see where it's going. You can see the kind of where the character progressions are going. The one thing that really cracked me up about Ted Lasso is the pretty boy footballer character. I forget his name now, but he's kind of like the almost David Beckham type, and he's just very obsessed with his looks and stuff and all that kind of thing. I just kept thinking, I've seen that actor before. So I looked him up, couldn't find anything. There was nothing he'd done that I'd seen. I just thought, his face is so familiar, to the point that I thought maybe I saw him when I used to live near London and worked in Sainsbury's, so I might have served him a few times because it just seemed so familiar. Maybe, a couple of months passed, and then I was on, I can't remember, no, I wasn't on anything. It just popped into my head. It suddenly was this epiphany, like, oh, I wasn't even thinking about it. It was just like, oh, you remember that thing you were thinking about a couple of months ago? Well, here's the answer that's been buried in the back of your brain for a couple of months. And I just had to research it to check that I was correct, and there we go, right in front of me. In plain living color on the screen on YouTube. There used to be an advert or a series of adverts for the Cineworld Unlimited card. And if you have gone to Cineworld in the past, well, it wouldn't even be last year now, would it? It'd be 2019. So it was 2019, I'm fairly certain, was the year that these adverts came out. They might have been on television, but they're mainly in the cinema when you sit down before a film. And we would have to sit through this thing. And they would run like variants of this advert at least 2 times before a film, sometimes up to 3 or 4. And it's about this guy. It's a play on Groundhog Day, and he gets up every day, and every day is the same. And then he gets the unlimited card, and it opens the world to a whole new, possibilities and all this stuff. And he's just this really smug-looking guy, just a face you want to slap. He's just so smug. And then they do the whole Groundhog Day scene where he's like, "Well, I'm a god." And when Bill Murray does it, it's funny, and you get the sarcasm, and you get the tone of it. When he says it, it almost seems like he means it. And I swear to God, you look on Facebook and people hated this advert. They hated this smug twat in this advert, and it wasn't doing anyone any favors. And it's him, it's the guy in Ted Lasso, so he's the Cineworld guy that, and it's nothing against him. He plays a really good part in Ted Lasso, but the advert was just not laid out right. I don't think it wouldn't have made me think, oh, that seems like something I'd like. It kind of pushed me back, but I was already an unlimited card member, so it's one of those things. It didn't really matter, but it really wouldn't sell me, I don't think, and that's a whole other side story. So Ted Lasso, loved the show, really looking forward to the second season. Jason Sudeikis was great. His character is just such a likable guy, and it's just nice sometimes just to get a show that's just about likable characters. Well, not all of them are likable, but and then the woman who owns the club, Hannah Waddingham, I believe is her name. I only remember that because she also did an episode of Brett Goldstein's podcast that I listened to. She's a really good character, and it's just good character. It's fun. It's really enjoyable. I enjoyed it a lot. It's not the masterpiece everyone was making it out to be, I don't think, but it was just, sometimes you just need a real good feel-good show. And I think it came out in like the middle of the summer last year when the pandemic was really in full flow, and so a lot of people, it was the perfect kind of medicine for that time, and I can really see that. So I'm looking forward to the second season, and I enjoyed it very much. Now, beyond that, I then noticed that Apple Plus TV, which there's lots of stuff if you scroll through the app, there's like rentals, there's lots of movies, but you have to pay to watch them. And I thought, well, there's not much on here. The Apple TV Plus originals were few and far between. Nothing that really catch my eye in terms of wanting to stay around being a subscriber. And then I saw Long Way Up. Long Way Up. I remember hearing about this maybe 6, 7 months ago and going, oh my God, they're doing Long Way Up. So I had no idea it was an Apple TV Plus exclusive. I had no idea it was now out and came out, I think, towards the end of 2020. And I thought, holy shit, I need to watch this. I'm going to have to pay up for a month of this subscription service. So I was clicking on it and seeing the episodes and stuff. And then I noticed that they also had Long Way Down and Long Way Round also on the streaming service. And I just thought, well, I'm going to have to do the whole thing, binge all 3 seasons. So if you're unfamiliar with what Long Way Round and Long Way Down and Long Way Up is, it's a series of documentaries. The documentary series is what is plural of series? I don't know. They're just series. Just use series, I guess. But there are three series that follow Ewan McGregor and his friend Charlie Boorman. Boorman. We'll go Boorman. Charlie Boorman, son of director John Boorman, and he used to be an actor, I think. He might still be an actor. I mean, he obviously just doesn't have the career that compares to Ewan McGregor, obviously, but he's very close friends with Ewan, and they got together in 2003, I believe, to do this round-the-world trip on motorbikes, a 3-month trip where they started in London, and they went to New York, but going the long way round. So through Europe, down through Russia, round to Alaska, Canada, and then across America. And I watched it when it came out, absolutely loved it in 2004 when the series came out. And then a few years later, they did Long Way Down, going from the top of the UK all the way down to the bottom of Africa, down through Europe and most of Africa. And another phenomenal series, which I don't think I saw all of it. I think I caught episodes here and there, but I was busy doing the backyard wrestling stuff and traveling around the UK, most weekends and stuff. So I didn't see all of it, but I saw some of it. And I was a big fan of those 2 series. I love them. I love the adventure of it. Love the fact that it was Ewan McGregor, who I'm a fan of as an actor and stuff. And just seeing the world is really fascinating, and doing it on bikes, and it's just it's great. It's so enjoyable. So I thought before I do the new one, I'll do Long Way Round and Long Way Down. And me and Connie watched it together, and she was vaguely interested, but then she kind of got drawn into it when I started watching the first episode. And it's become our thing over the past 2.5 months. Really dragged it out, really enjoyed it. Every time I come home, I live close enough to where I work that I can come home on my lunch break, spend an hour, or probably about 50 minutes when you take away the walking time, and 45 minutes when you take away preparing the food and getting rid of it. So I can have a good 45 minutes of sitting down to watch something with Connie, and that's all we've done for the past 2.5 months is Long Way Round, eventually Long Way Down, and then finally Long Way Up, which was done in 2019, just before the pandemic hit pretty much. And they did that on electric motorbikes. And the trip that they did for that one was from the very bottom of South America all the way up through Central America and then ending in LA. So not quite as epic of a trip as the previous 2, but still almost like 3 months worth of riding. And they did it on electric Harley Davidson prototypes, I believe. So we literally just finished Long Way Up 2 nights ago. So it's been such a journey. I love those shows so much. I think maybe I prefer the original the best because it's the most arduous journey of the 3 by far. There's some really dicey stuff in Russia, and there's just some really tense moments. Long Way Down was really good. Went up and down a bit for me, but mostly really enjoyed that one. And then Long Way Up, mostly I really loved, actually, but there were times where I felt like they didn't give us enough information about certain things because the support cars that they brought along were also electric, and they kept breaking down, and it'd be like, oh, well, we're stuck here. We don't know what we're going to do. And then the episode ends, and then the next episode begins, and they never mention it again. So it's like, well, what? Tie up the loose end. Obviously we know you get back on the road, but how? Don't set it up if you're not going to pay it off, sort of thing. But obviously with Long Way Up, it looks a lot better because they've got 4K cameras and they use a lot of drones, which is some amazing photography in Long Way Up. Some of those landscapes and stuff, they go to salt flats and all sorts of different locations. And they go to Machu Picchu. That was incredible to see that in such great quality and amazing. Anyway, so I loved revisiting those shows so much. I might even do a separate video about that because there's a lot to talk about. But I feel like I just summarized it pretty well. Going back to those 2 shows and then watching the new one was a real highlight. I absolutely loved that, and it was more than worth paying $4.99 every month for the Apple TV Plus. But to tie in directly to the next movie, Billie Eilish, The World's a Little Blurry. So this is a new documentary that just came out on Apple TV Plus. I think I'm going to do a separate video on that, funnily enough, but let's just say that I thought the documentary was fantastic. It's a 5-star documentary to me. I absolutely loved it. And I'm going to do a separate video on that because there's a lot I want to get into with it, and I don't want these wrap-up videos to be too gargantuan in length. But yeah, so as far as the Apple TV Plus thing goes, it actually worked out pretty great for $4.99. I've gotten a lot of entertainment out of Ted Lasso, the 3 Long Way series, and Billie Eilish, The World's a Little Blurry, and one other film that I'll get to shortly. After that, we have a documentary that I watched on Sky Documentaries, the Sky Documentaries channel, which is Bruno v. Tyson. This came out this year. It's a retrospective on the feud between Frank Bruno and Mike Tyson. And I thought, okay, I'll check this out. And it really drew me in. I really enjoyed it, and I watched it. And, you know, you really get drawn into the adrenaline of seeing these boxing matches, and it's really exciting. But ultimately, it's just so fucking stupid as well. You know, I know it's a very manly thing, like boxing, and yeah, it's a good old fight and stuff. But you see them then, like, it's kind of a retrospective where you just see, like, the clips from all the interviews and all the scandals and everything. And then right towards the end of the film, you now catch up with Frank Bruno, as he is now going to meet Mike Tyson, you know, in kind of present day. And you just see these two old guys who kind of, you know, especially Frank Bruno, who's been admitted to mental facilities multiple times, and you have to think it's all those blows to the head, you know. I remember an old documentary I watched about, I can't remember if it was Frazier and Ali, or whether it was the other one. What was the other big rival that he had? I think it was Frazier. And I don't want to say this in case it's wrong, but it was a rival of Ali, and they had a big fight. It was this legendary fight. I watched a documentary about this like 15 years ago, and this guy, they were interviewing him for this documentary, and he was like, you know, he was a bit, I don't know if he was a bit shaky. He seemed a bit like it was affecting him, like all the blows he'd taken to the head. But he was like kind of very slyly satisfied about how Muhammad Ali's health had deteriorated, and he's like, I did that to him. That was me. And it just feels so sad the way that it turns out, you know, and that the head trauma and everything, it's really fucked up. So I kind of admittedly get that primal enjoyment and excitement out of seeing these boxing matches, but I also feel that kind of like uncomfortable, you know, this isn't really worth it, is it? I don't know. It just seems sad to me ultimately by the end of it. WandaVision, Disney Plus. That has to get a separate video. There's so much I want to say about that, but all I'll say now is that I've rated it. Well, when it first started, they had 2 episodes that dropped, and everyone was raving about it. WandaVision, everyone was saying this is incredible. Like, it's like David Lynch, and it's got all this and it's all that, and it's, you know. So I was like, okay, I'm quite looking forward to this. I'm intrigued to see where it's going. I love Elizabeth Olsen, and I like the character relationship between her and Vision. How's it going to work with everything that happened in the Marvel Cinematic Universe? So I was intrigued. Watched the first 2 episodes, and I thought, that's good. That's an interesting concept. But everyone was like, this is amazing. And I thought, I'm not seeing it. All I'll say is that I rated it 5 stars, and I'll talk about that in a separate video. Raya and the Last Dragon. Or was it Raya? I think it's Raya. Raya? Fuck. I remember when I watched the film, I was like, oh, that's how you say it, and I've promptly forgotten. Raya and the Last Dragon, the latest Disney film that came out on Disney Plus, the premiere access. So we watched that. Kelly Marie Tran playing the lead character. I loved this film. I really did. I saw the first trailer, was very intrigued, and you know, it just seemed like it was a cool, you know, different culture kind of story, and it just felt nice. Like, you get stuff like Moana, which goes into that Polynesian stuff. It's the different flavors, you know. It's just different flavors, and it's enjoyable to see different cultures presented like that. But it was just a good story. It was fun. It was adventurous, a nice fantasy. The visuals, stunning. There's some absolutely stunning cinematography in this film that I thought was you know, just gorgeous. Like, really, there's about 4 or 5 shots where I was like, wow. Really, really loved Raya and the Last Dragon. It was strange. It felt strange that there was no music, or no songs, I should say, because you kind of expect, you know, the Disney film to come in with all the songs and everything, and which I don't know how this film would have played out with songs, but I kind of I liked it without either way. At some point in early March, the Star catalog came over to Disney Plus, so a lot of new movies, more adult movies came onto Disney Plus. And I had a bit of trouble actually kind of reconfiguring my profile to allow myself to watch these films that were, you know, rated 18 or whatever it was. So the first one I watched was Cocktail. Now, I like Tom Cruise. You know, it feels like I should see a lot of his main movies and things like that. But Cocktail was one that's never really appealed to me. I was scrolling through the Star Library on Disney Plus, and I saw the thumbnail, the kind of the cover image at the top there was Tom Cruise in some kind of tropical climate with Elizabeth Shue next to him, and I thought, okay, I'm going to watch that. You know, unashamedly, I find Elizabeth Shue to be incredibly attractive, and that drew me into watching the film. Interestingly enough, and I know this is going to sound terrible as a guy, I find Elizabeth Shue incredibly attractive, but I really don't in the Back to the Future sequels. You know, so was it Claudia Wells who plays Jennifer in Back to the Future Part 1? Gorgeous. When you have Elizabeth Shue in the wig playing Jennifer in Part 2 and 3, it doesn't feel right, you know. But seeing her in any other film, gorgeous, and I know that shouldn't be the point, but that's what drew me into Cocktail, and I watched it, and bit of an icky film, to be honest. Cocktail, the morality of it just feels makes you feel kind of dirty by the end of it, especially like the triumphant ending, which, you know, kind of goes against a lot of the moral kind of message of the entire movie. But Tom Cruise plays this guy who's like trying to earn $1 million. He's this kind of really ambitious guy. He ends up working in this bar under this bartender, and they're kind of doing all the drinks and everything. And he becomes his mentor in a way, and becomes a very bad mentor. And he's probably the most interesting character in the film, is this older guy. And but Tom Cruise gets led astray. And it's more than half the movie, I think, until he meets Elizabeth Shue, and then their romance becomes the central focus of the story. So I feel like, given how much the movie rests on that romance and kind of the difficulties they go through, she probably should have been introduced a little bit sooner. So the film feels a little bit uneven in that sense. I enjoyed it, but it wasn't really great. She did a really good job with the role that she had, and you know, I bought the romance and everything. But yeah, ultimately it just was. It felt a little bit grim by the end. You know, I felt like it had one foot in one movie, one foot in the other, and it didn't quite make for a great whole, I didn't think. But I may watch it again just for the eye candy, I guess. Am I even allowed to say that anymore? Probably not. But yeah, Elizabeth Shue, stunning woman, and it was just, you know, just enjoyable. You know, it's just one of those things. But I think that she did do a very good job of portraying the scorn and hurt that she felt when their relationship kind of gets stretched and kind of put to the test and stuff. And Tom Cruise, he was okay. You know, he was all right. I mean, he you know, he's flipping around all the drinks and stuff, and it's clear that he put a lot of time into doing that stuff correctly and everything, and he has that kind of swagger, and it's a bit like Color of Money, where he's quite good at portraying a bit of a twat, you know? And you kind of get that sense from him in this one too. But you know, overall it wasn't a great film, I don't think. And then I started watching a couple of the ESPN 30 on 30 documentaries that were on Disney Plus. They don't have all of them because there's many of them, but the first one I watched was 42 to 1, which is about Mike Tyson's streak, I guess, in boxing, and how he was eventually knocked off the top by, I think, Buster Douglas, wasn't it, the boxer who beat him. It was an okay documentary. It didn't exactly you know, it didn't engage me as much as the Frank Bruno one, but it was interesting to see another side of Mike Tyson, I suppose. It was just an interesting enough documentary that was told very well. And then I watched Nature Boy, which is about Ric Flair, and that one was okay. It felt like it skirted over some things, but like an hour and a half, you just really don't have enough time to tell the story of the Nature Boy Ric Flair, and the WWE have done a far better job of covering his career, but that's more focused on a lot of the wrestling stuff. And I don't know, I feel like there's a darker side to Ric Flair that could have been explored a little bit deeper with this, but you know, it was very well done. I enjoyed it, but I think that it's a life that's been lived so large that it's hard to kind of cover it and nail it down to 90 minutes, I think. After that, we get to another Apple TV Plus film, and this is the animated film Wolfwalkers from Cartoon Saloon. This film looked really good. I love Cartoon Saloon. I've only seen one of their other films, which is Song of the Sea. I also own The Secret of the Kells and The Breadwinner. Haven't watched them yet, admittedly. Showed them in a Blu-ray update probably about 2 or 3 years ago. That's my bad. But I love Song of the Sea, and Wolfwalkers looked really good. Now, here's an interesting story. So, I showed Connie the trailer for Wolfwalkers in the hope that she'd want to watch it with me. And she did not want to watch it. She said that it looked unfinished. She didn't like the look of it, and would not be watching it. And I said to her, I said to her, I've never been more disappointed in you. I just thought, how can you judge a film based on how the visuals look and not give it a chance? But two, the visuals look great. but there is a style to it where you see some of the edges of the drawing and things, and they took inspiration from that, from, things like The Tale of the Princess Kaguya, which has a more impressionistic kind of feel where you can kind of see the lines here and there. And it's certainly a choice, and I'm not saying I 100% love it, but I was really disappointed in Connie. But eventually, many months later, she decided to give it a shot. We watched it, and she loved it. And the more she thought about it afterwards, the more she loved it too. And the same for me. Really enjoyed it when I watched it, and then the more I thought about it, it's just a great story. It's about this young girl who lives with her father in this town, and out in the woods there are wolves, and they stay away, but they also want to cut the trees down, and her father's been tasked with going in and getting the wolves out. And then she meets this young girl, another girl in the forest who's one of the Wolfwalkers. She's a kind of a part of the pack, and they form a friendship, and it's a fantastical story. And it's just beautiful. It's arresting visually. There's just the Irish flair to it, just gives it something completely different. Again, another flavor that is just fantastic, and I completely love the film. It's really, if you haven't seen it, I highly recommend you check it out. It's another winner, I think, from Cartoon Saloon. And I am kind of gutted it probably won't get a Blu-ray release over in the UK. They've mentioned the kind of creators, the owners of the studio Cartoon Saloon have said that I think G-Kids in America might put out a box set of their films, which will be the only chance to get Wolfwalkers in a physical copy, which is a shame because I already own all the other films, but I really want this on Blu-ray. It looks fantastic, and it looked great on the TV streaming it, but I would really like a physical copy of that film, The next film is something that requires its own video, I think. If I have the time, hopefully I can make a video about this, even though there's so much to talk about. On Sky Cinema, I watched Zack Snyder's Justice League. Yeah. Wow. It wasn't like, oh my god, I love this. This is a masterpiece, one of the greatest comic book movies ever made. But having rewatched the Joss Whedon version the night before, wow. Wow. What a fascinating story, just on a level of how different the two films are. Fascinating, but I actually love this one, and I can't wait to talk about it in more depth. On Netflix, we watched Fighting with My Family. I'd seen that in the cinema. Connie didn't come with me, so we watched it so she could see it for the first time. It's a good film. I didn't enjoy it as much as when I saw it in the cinema. It's I don't know, it's not great, I don't think. I don't know, and I know people really love it and stuff, and I love wrestling. It's a good film. It's a good story, but ultimately it wasn't as good as it was in the cinema. And it's a decent film. I probably don't feel the need to own it, but yeah, it's good. It's a good film. Falling Down. So this is a film that, and a quick story with this one. So I had heard about this from Robbie Webster on his channel many years ago. He talked about it, about this guy played by Michael Douglas, who's out one day in a traffic jam, and he just snaps and goes around LA, and just things start going really south. And so it sounded like a kind of an entertaining film, but like a really troubling film morally, to see this guy going around doing these horrible things. But what I loved when I watched it was that you have the Robert Duvall character who kind of counterbalances all of it, because he's the guy who's on the last day of his job, and he's got his own story and struggles, and he hears about these things that are happening throughout the city, and so he decides to kind of track and try and find this guy. And there's some fucked up stuff in it, but it's a really good story, told really well with great performances. Nice, like I think it was like a 90-minute movie, or like an hour and 40 minutes, really well done. And we just loved it. It was just a really, really good film. And the funny story about this is that I interviewed Paul Hirsch on my channel last year, talked about some of the films that he'd edited over the years. Oscar-winning film editor Paul Hirsch, and he edited Falling Down. So after watching this film on Netflix, I sent him an email and just talked about how much I liked the film. He replied back. We had a bit of a back and forth conversation that night about the film, and that was really cool. That was just a really cool thing to be able to do, to just watch a film and go, oh, Paul edited that. I'll have a little chat with him about it and say what I liked, what I didn't like, and then we talked about some other films. And so that was a really cool highlight of my week when I watched Falling Down, to be able to have a quick chat with Paul. I then watched something that's been on my Netflix list for ages, probably years, Across Grace Alley, which is a short film directed by Ralph Macchio, about this young boy who's going through some problems with parents who are divorcing, and he sees this woman across the street in the window who's a ballet dancer. It was a sweet little film, not much more to it than that. It was okay, but Ralph did a good job. Then I watched Horse Girl from last year, starring Alison Brie. Very strange film, very weird film. I bought into it. I'm not sure what the fuck happened by the end of it, but yeah, an interesting look at kind of mental illness. But I feel like it didn't commit enough to one side that I wasn't sure how I felt about it by the end, if that makes sense. And then Adventures in Babysitting was a film I watched on Disney Plus, another Elizabeth Shue film. Fun 80s movie, just about this kind of 17-year-old girl who's babysitting these kids. She goes out into the city and everything goes wrong from there, and it just they get into all sorts of hijinks and stuff, and it's a lot of fun. Not much more to say about it, really. I enjoyed it. It's not a great film. I would recommend it, but it's nothing to rush out to see. I just had a good time because it's an 80s movie. It has that certain style and feel to it, and so I just enjoyed it for that. It was okay. And if it feels like I'm rushing, it's because I am. My laptop, which is recording the audio, is fucking up every 4 minutes. And it's a race to the fucking finish. And I've stopped this video about 15 different times now. So hopefully it feels nice and organic and flowing and not disjointed and stitched together. Anyway, Framing Britney Spears, I watched this on Sky Cinema. People were talking a lot about this documentary when it came out, and I felt it to be a little lacking. It just, I don't know, there's something about it that it was interesting to see her story and to humanize her a little bit. I think that's very important, and it's something that people seem to forget with famous people, is that they're human. They have a heart and they have emotions and everything. But to see how she was preyed on is, I mean, yeah, it's a provoking film, but I feel like it skated on the lines of being a bit grimy in terms of there's no participation from her. Apparently she was not happy about it going out, so I don't know how I feel about it in that sense, but also it just didn't dig deep enough into the things that it was presenting. But it was okay. It was okay, and I'm glad that I saw more of that story. I'd just like to see something a bit more deeper, I think. On Netflix, I watched Fatale, starring Hilary Swank. Really fun film. It's a really fun thriller. I enjoyed the twists and turns. It was really entertaining film. It wasn't great, a little bit predictable at times, unpredictable at other times. I loved her character because I felt like throughout the film I didn't know whether to hate her or to find something to empathize with her. Like the allegiances kept shifting for me. I didn't know whether the husband who was kind of in the situation maybe deserved it. And so I liked how it kept shifting. There was one element of the story that I feel like needed to be made clear, and it wasn't, so I don't fully know where I kind of sit on the way the film ended. But I really enjoyed it overall. It was just a good thriller, nothing special or anything like that. Another Netflix film, Love and Monsters. Loved this. This was so much fun. I'd never heard of it, and Connie said, "Do you want to come watch this film?" I was like, "Yeah, sure." And it was great. I like post-apocalyptic, these big bugs that have kind of grown and mutated. It reminded me very much of Nausicaa, The Valley of the Wind, one of my all-time favorite films, but in live action. It was fun. The production design was incredible. I was not surprised to see that Dan Henner, who worked on the Lord of the Rings movies, did the production design for this film. The CGI it feels fairly cheap at times, but towards the end, it actually felt like it was kind of homaging the Ray Harryhausen films, some of that stop motion stuff. It felt really fun. It was just a fun movie. Really enjoyed the performances, the post-apocalyptic kind of road movie that it turned out to be. The Mavis scene was incredible. I loved that. That was such a beautiful scene. I thought, really, you should check that out. It's a really fun movie, Love and Monsters. And finally, on Sky Cinema, just last night, me and Connie watched Promising Young Woman, which is up for all these Oscars, written and directed by Emerald Fennell, who I think was the showrunner on season 2 of Killing Eve. And wow, what a film. Very provoking film, again, especially towards the end. That third act, holy fuck. Really great film. A few nitpicks here and there, that I'll maybe get into at some point in the future, perhaps. I might even do a standalone video on this film, for sure. But I thought it was great. The hook was fantastic. A woman who goes out every week to a club, pretends to be blind drunk. A guy comes up to her every week and says, "You okay? Do you want me to take you home?" And they try and take advantage of her, but she is pretending to be drunk. That's all I'll say. It's it's an important film, I think, and I hope that it wins an Oscar just so more people can watch it and say, well, why should this win an Oscar? And then they really see what the film is saying. That would be interesting. But that was it. So I just need to go and change the laptop again, and we'll round this thing off. Okay, that became quite stressful towards the end with the laptop issues. It's like I have a 4-minute window now to film stuff, and then it just balks the whole fucking system. Anyway, right, so that aside, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I'm going to try and get to some of those individual videos, so that would be perhaps the Long Way series. I would say WandaVision for sure. I'd like to do one on the Billie Eilish documentary. I have a lot to say about that. And maybe Promising Young Woman too. So, it's just one of those things where I can kind of judge whether it's worth a full video or not, or whether just something I can give some brief comments on during one of these wrap-up videos. So let me know your thoughts on this series in general. Any of the things that I've talked about. Oh, the Zack Snyder's Justice League. I'll try to get to a video on that. But I don't want to spread myself too thin either and kind of come up with all these videos I'm supposed to make. But at the same time, I'm enjoying talking about movies. So that's the point, right? So thank you for watching, hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one.
He's alright by me. Apart from the fact he throws cans of Carlin into a tree. Yeah, he's really cool. Yeah, he's really cool. But he's not quite as cool as you, 'cause